Hi everybody and welcome to the show that makes Mondays just the best day of the week as long as you're a movie fan, because this is the United States of a Movie podcast. The podcast where the three of us, me, Ryan and Will, try to figure out one movie to define each state in these United States. It's an incredible debate. It's the highlight of my week every week, and it really is making my movie knowledge and movie fandom go to a whole new level. But of course, this show would be nothing if I didn't have my fellas with me. So Ryan, welcome back to the show.
You know, it's going to be a great episode when I have to start out by apologizing to the great people of Wyoming. Because, boy, this is going to be divisive.
This is going to be a tough one as well, because, yeah, you bought a good one, I bought a classic, and my other amazing co-host, Will, welcome back to the show.
Hi, I'm going to be calling for Shane to come back for the next 2 hours. Shane, come back, Shane. Everybody's favorite character, the character that's taken the world by storm.
Don't even start. Don't even start with that, because the state we're trying to take down this week is the state of Wyoming. Now, I'm not going to lie that when I sort of came up with the idea for this podcast, that this state and one of these movies, the one that I brought to the table, was actually kind of the thing that inspired it. That I'm like, wow, that's the only movie that I really know about Wyoming. I wonder if you could do that for every state. And that's kind of where it came from. Because the one that I'm talking about, the movie that I brought to the table, is 1977's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Steven Spielberg's amazing sci-fi movie. I would almost say documentary upon rewatch. It's a very different movie than I expected. But this was the movie that, for me, taught me about Devil's Tower. That's why I know Devil's Tower is in Wyoming, and that is why I heard about Wyoming when I was a kid, because of this movie.
I thought all of Wyoming was just made out of a pile of mashed potatoes. So it makes sense, yeah.
That was my perception as a kid as well. Yeah.
But I think this is going to be a fascinating week, because the pair of you brought two movies that really do, I mean, bring the Wyoming along with it. Ryan, for example, which one did you bring? One that obviously was on my list as well.
Yeah, and doing the research for Wyoming, it's a short list, but the list of movies is pretty impressive. And I ended up going with one of my favorites in the Taylor Sheridan American Western trilogy, Wind River. And then 5 minutes into this movie, I went, oh no. This is not a great representation.
This is a dark movie for sure. Written and directed by Taylor Sheridan. Stars. It's the strangest MCU movie of them all, as Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch go off on an adventure in Wyoming to
Punisher. And the Punisher.
Punisher for half a minute, yeah.
And the Punisher, yeah, who gets pretty badly punished himself. Like you're saying, it's kind of like the third of Taylor Sheridan's unofficial neo-Western sort of trilogy. See, he wrote Sicario, which was banger. He wrote Hell or High Water, banger. And then he wrote and directed Wind River, which, in my opinion, is also a bit of a banger. But the thing is that, you know, I am a huge movie fan, as is Ryan, but I have to say that my movie knowledge and fandom is very much of the modern era, from around when I was born onwards, where Will is a movie nerd that goes all the way back in history and brings these movies I've never seen to the table. Will, tell us about your excellent choice.
I brought Shane, which is, once you see this movie, as I was telling the guys in the text thread, you see where like 90 other movies came from after this.
Oh, yeah.
Like everybody like ripped off this movie. It's sort of like Nosferatu, where you see that movie and you're like, oh, every horror movie director watched this and then they made their own movie.
Very much
Shane is very much the same way.
So he's talking about 1953's Shane, directed by George Stevens, starring Alan Ladd, Jean Arthur, Jack Palance turns up in this movie, and we're going to talk about that. Van Heflin. It was, just like you said, Will, one of my other ones on the list, and I really wanted to watch it because it's been a while, but it's Unforgiven. And I'm glad I didn't bring Unforgiven, because it's exactly the same movie.
We forgive you.
Yeah.
It's essentially
Very forgiving.
I am forgiven. It's
we
a
were
very sort of
flip-flopping back and
slow-moving-
forth though. We were dancing back and forth on a number of films that we'll talk about later, but
No, 100%. They were so, like you said, like Ryan, is that the choices for Wyoming, though limited, are huge. Just great movies that you just really wanted to get into. But like, but Shane, yeah, I mean, like, because Unforgiven is a very slow-moving, sort of almost introspective Western that has a gunfight in the last 3 minutes of the movie that lasts 3 seconds. And that's pretty much Shane. Honestly, if you've never seen Shane, Shane is the story of some sort of wandering gunfighter who tries to step away from the life and help out on a farm in Wyoming, but is driven to a triple murder and life on the road by the incessant questions and just annoying screams of this small child with brain damage. Is the basically that?
I want to spend a good hour talking about how much I despise this child and how it's maybe ruined movies for me. Like I might quit this podcast based on his performance alone.
I mentioned to the missus, I said to Mrs. Ollie, she's always asking, so what are the movies this week? And I said, oh, Wind River, Close Encounters. She's okay, cool. And I go, and Shane, she goes, ooh, Shane. I was like, oh, you know Shane? She goes, oh, yeah, I know Shane. And then as the movie ended, I texted her, much like that description I just gave you, and she burst out laughing. She goes, I've been waiting for you to watch this movie because that's Shane. He's like all the time, Shane, come back, Shane. What are you doing, Shane? I believe I said to you guys, I've never wished for a child to die of dysentery more.
Yeah. It's almost as though it's like this was the first child actor ever on screen. And then from that point forward, they're just like, don't do this.
Yeah. Not only is the kid like, as you said, Ryan, dead behind the eyes, looks like, a soulless demon child, but also just the worst actor I think that's ever acted. Like just every 50% of the kid's dialogue is the name Shane. Just Shane, come out here, Shane.
My only negative of this movie is his performance and the fact that Jack Palance is only in this for a very small amount of time.
He's so cool in this movie. Like, I was going along the lines of, because we talked about him in City Slickers, and him as Curly is just such an iconic sort of moment, iconic role. But then he rolls into town in this movie like the angel of death. And like just
that's the typical Man in Black. Like like you'd see a Yul Brynner in Westworld, or literally any other performance after this. Yeah, and it was
we do need to touch on the fact that, because I was just looking up this actor before we. Brandon DeWild is the guy, the actor that played the young boy.
I do not remember that name.
I can't remember his name.
Doesn't matter.
I don't care. Exactly. He was, however, nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
He was nominated years later when he grew up and changed his name to Adam Driver. Beloved American actor. He got good, guys.
Okay, so he continued acting in stage, film, and television into adulthood before he died at the age of 30 in a car crash in Colorado. So rest in peace, but also your character was the worst character. I've honestly... It's kind of like, I saw you guys texting about it. Is he like the son of a producer? Is he like, did he win a competition? It's just like...
I think he was made in a factory that produces bad actors, like just assembled. Like it was a Pinocchio thing. He was just put together.
Yeah. He would have made a great like a live action Chucky,
Oh yeah.
He's very much Children of the Corn.
Yes. But less charming.
A child of the corn and put them in Wyoming. That is this is how this movie comes together. Now we're not gonna dog on a child actor too much because he's a child, but at the same time I'm gonna put it on maybe the director of going, you must have realized. You looking through the camera, right? You're watching the same scenes I'm watching, right? You're listening to that child speak, right? Because
there's not enough ADR or fix it in post in the world to rectify the performance of him. But we don't even need to dwell on it. I mean,
we kind of do.
It'll come up, but there are certain moments that were, jarring to me.
So like, this is our second George Stevens movie. We watched Giant, which is his other film that he did after this.
Yeah.
Clearly he learned his lesson, and he's like, don't give children any lines. Don't let them speak. Just focus on the adult actors. Clearly
I was wondering that, like, this is such a great film, and you wrote that in our group that it's so clear that this is like the Rosetta Stone of that kind of era of Western films. And I think just like I think it seemed like every movie at that period just kind of looked like this, is very much like a straightforward studio Western. It looked great. And you can definitely tell when there's parts shot on a soundstage.
Yeah,
I think for the most part,
the dance,
the wedding
scene,
party, right? Yeah.
yeah. That's the only thing, because I was about to say, like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a studio picture, because much like sort of Giant, it had just production value dripping from it from the first shot. From the first shot,
great.
I was like, "Oh, Will brought a okay. Here we go. Well played, Will. This is very much Wyoming."
You know, again, as we said last time with Giant, George Stevens, he was a cinematographer, so he really understood how to use the camera, and that's apparent here. He just
you could tell for sure.
Those shots are just gorgeous.
Yeah, it did get the Oscar for best cinematography. I do believe in that particular year. I have to be honest. I was very much Alan Ladd. I'm like, who? You know, this was completely new to me. But that almost, to be quite honest, my sort of lack of real knowledge about sort of some of these older actors like Gene Arthur and stuff like that is they just are the character. So I'm just watching and going, all right, you know, Alan Ladd, whoever this guy is, I guess he's Shane. He does have an interesting presence to him. You know what I mean?
Oh,
yeah. He's not like the typical like Clint Eastwood, like tough looking guy. He's this is gonna sound a little mean. I don't mean it to be mean, but he's more average looking than that. Yeah. He blends in better.
He's a softer character for sure.
Softer,
yeah. But you do believe it when he like goes into Shane mode and like starts beating people up. You know,
Shane's off. Yeah, you know, you're so right. But he plays that part so well. He's got this like calm demeanor about him. But and maybe it's because we've seen, you know, from this movies like this so many more times. Like, you know, the character's very capable and he's done some shit, and you know he's just gonna explode. But he doesn't have to. He doesn't do that until like the really long drawn out fight scene, which reminded me of the Roddy Piper, which reminded me of They Live. I'm like, man, this thing just keeps on going
and escalating. Well, you call him like he has calm demeanor, which is true, apart from the fact that he is extraordinarily jumpy and goes for his gun. Anytime he hears any kind of loud noise, twice in like within 5 minutes of meeting this family, like the kid cocks the weapon, he spins around ready to shoot the child. Wish he had. And then then the guy goes, "Come on into my house in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming with my wife and child," and a loud noise is made again, and he goes for his gun again. I'm like, dude, get this guy out of your house. Your family is in danger.
Yeah, this Confederate soldier with PTSD, it's like, just come on in, and you know, the guy's like ready to pull his gun on anyone. Times were different back then, you know.
God, you were right. I mean, the thing is now help me out, Will, because like I said, this is of course the first time I'm watching it. The that reveal of him being Confederate soldier, that's only comes right at the end when he shows off. He gets Jack Palance face to face, right? That's when he just throws down the Yankee comment.
Yeah, it's like a real subtle thing, because he calls him a low down Yankee liar, which, you know, man, back in the day, that was a real insult. But yeah, that's like the only time it's like, oh, he was a Confederate guy. There might be other clues that have just been lost over time, like little subtle things in the costume design and stuff. But that's really the part where you're like, oh, this guy was a Confederate soldier, because they never quite go into a lot of detail about his past. You just know that he's like a wandering gunfighter.
Right.
Well, that's the interesting thing about him, that he does. You get nothing really from Shane. It's all that kind of mystery. And then the thing is that was quite interesting is you had that other character, the guy that gets killed, who was the other Confederate soldier. The guys are always sort of teasing. You know, they're always like teasing him with the music and stuff like that. But it's it seemed to be good-natured joshing. But I was like, I thought that was quite an interesting, like, oh, well, there we go. Like, we actually got a little character thing about Shane. And then I realized as well, as this movie was ending, I go, oh, this is the movie they talk about in The Negotiator. Where you've seen that with Kevin Spacey and Samuel L. Jackson, and they're debating about whether or not he's dead at the end. So it's about like, and I was watching, because he rides away and like, so Kevin Spacey's character series, like, no, he's dead. He's dead in the thing. It's why he doesn't look back. Right. And I'm like, no, he doesn't look back because he never wants to see that child ever
Right.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, could not wait to leave that town and be like, oh dear, I got shot. Guess I better leave town. Bye, Joey. Just balance out of there.
What do you think, Will? Like, I'm interested in your take because, like, I realize that this is a take some people have had, like, that because they don't even really reference that he's been shot until the kid goes, "Oh, you're bleeding," and you're like, "Oh, I wonder," because that guy had the drop on him with the rifle. So,
Yeah.
is he riding off to his death? I mean, like, I didn't feel like that when I watched it. I'm on the Samuel L. Jackson analysis side.
Yeah, I don't think he dies either. He clearly gets hit because like in the gunfight, you see him kind of like wince, like I got hit in the shoulder. But if he does die, it's probably not right there. It's probably from a horrible infection.
Yeah.
He died of dysentery.
He died of dysentery. Yep.
I don't think it's meant to be like he died. I think it's really just meant to be like, it doesn't matter. This is this dude's life wherever he goes.
Right.
It's just going to be the same way. There's actually another movie that I think deals with the theme a little bit better, made around the same time with Gregory Peck, called The Gunfighter.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same character, but played by Gregory Peck, so it's awesome. And it's like the same thing. Like it's more definitive at the end, but it's like no matter where this guy goes, this is gonna be his life. And so I think at the end, it doesn't really matter if he lives or dies. It's just this is this dude's fate.
Yeah,
You can see that this was the genesis for like other genre films that were like, we can just do this and tweak one thing. It's basically the wandering drifter comes in, works with this family. The family's being terrorized by some unknown source, be it like other ranchers or Native Americans, heaven forbid, but like that they have to band together, and then it's a tale as old as time, and
Well,
I love that type of story.
it's the
Yeah.
Mandalorian, you know. It's
Exactly.
like-
Yeah.
That's why, like I was about to say, is like usually, you know, at this point, I realize I haven't talked about the plot, but it's almost like it's much like Will described it. It is the plot. It is just like it really is that classic gunslinger rolls in. It's Wyoming, so it's there's a bunch of homesteaders. So there was the Homestead Act, which enabled people to kind of build their houses in the open range. Now, at the same time, there were people that then had cattle. They wanted to be able to move their cattle across the open range, and it's creating some friction. So he starts working with this one homesteader who's got his farm, his wife, and his really annoying son. Just, I'm never going to be able to drop it. That kid, I just wanted to throttle that child. But then, yeah, it's so the ranchers are causing trouble, trying to drive the homesteaders out, and it sort of comes down to the fact at the end that Shane just sort of realizes that there's an ambush has been set for this guy. The guy's not, you know, he's not going to be able to take this in. Shane's like, I'm a gunslinger, so he knocks him out to save him, and goes to fight the fight for the
He
valley.
pistol whips the shit out of him.
Yeah.
After that, like a pretty full-on fight as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he lost some memories in that concussion right there for sure. Like
The few that he had left.
yeah.
You're my child? I don't think you are.
The scene when they all meet, this is like, I don't know if you know this, but I actually took notes during this movie, which I realize I should probably be doing for all of these. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, audience. I know what I'm talking about. No, but the scene where they all have the meeting in the rain in like the shack, and they're all coming in to discuss like, what are we gonna do? And then they figure out like they all gotta go into town together. My favorite bit in that is they have this really like deep, heartfelt moment. And the guy just starts playing the harmonica. And it cuts to him. I'm like, read the fucking room, man. It was the worst timing ever. And it gave me an absolute chuckle. Like, what are you doing, man? We're talking here. We're trying.
I just wanted to show you guys. I've been practicing for a while.
This so yeah, like so we talked about the cinematography, you talked about George Stevens' eye, but let's just like the combination of that and Wyoming. This is quite stunning. And it was shot in Jackson Hole. There's even like they constructed and then tore down most of it. There is one shack that still exists there. It's referred to as the Shane Shack now. It's in a state of disrepair.
It's a cool name for like a restaurant.
Yeah, the Shane Shack.
Yeah. As opposed to where I live, it's called the Shame Shack.
Well, funny you should say that because, you know, my missus is a giant Batman fan. And so she was sending me this stuff. So there's like the whole Shane thing. It was like a meme before memes were meme. That even the original Adam West Batman TV show had a bad guy called Shame. okay, who is a cowboy gunslinger. And there's a little kid in the episode that's always, Shane, Shane. And so even they're poking fun.
That's funny.
Shane, like, it's been one of these things that turns up in movies. And my missus, she goes, she goes, my brothers and I, even now, it's like, it's always like, Shane, Shane.
See, Will, I thought you had originally picked the Michael Fassbender movie Shame, which is, that's a movie.
An entirely different movie featuring Michael Fassbender's penis.
Yes. Michael's Fassbender.
Finally on screen, what the audience is always wanted.
Clamoring for it.
Another movie that takes massive amounts from Shane, even to the point of taking the exact dialogue from the end of the movie in the end of its movie, is Logan, the Wolverine picture, which 100%, trust me, I'm figuring out how to get that in the show, because I'm like, as soon as we go to North Dakota, guess which one I'm picking, because I can't wait to talk about that movie. But like, I think, that's what I think is like, well, I'm so glad, much like Giant, Will, that, like I said, this is a whole era of movies that I've never really got into. I used to, watch on TV on BBC Two when I'm a kid, nothing else is on. Yeah, I'd watch some of these classic old movies and things like that, but the Westerns weren't quite so. I think that's much more of a sort of like an American sort of thing.
Well, even for
World
me,
War II movies and things like that, British movies and things. So this was like such a great watch. It was
from a flip side of that coin, as an American, like growing up in a similar time period, this genre of movies just never clicked with me until I got much older. And I was, when you picked this, I was like begrudgingly like, oh, another like period Western piece that I have to sit through and this and that, which I love doing for this podcast because it really like fills those cinema gaps in my watch history. And I put this on and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is like such a great film. And again, you can really see that it's the genesis for a litany of other movies.
And the Grand Tetons in the background, like it's maybe one of the best looking movies I've really, considering some of the other movies on this list and some of the other movies we've talked about, that I'm like, man, they really could make movies back then, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty damn legit.
And then you look at the budget, it was like $3 million.
Yeah. Which is
but I mean, that's back in like 1950s.
Right.
So that was $200 billion back then.
There's some, like, for example, I was like, this is the time in 1953 that the sickest burn was, he smells like a pig. He's a pig farmer.
We're gonna have to bleep that.
Yeah. For anyone listening in the past, you have to believe it.
We've just been demonetized.
We call this one Sody Pop. I'm like, ooh, sick burn.
I was texting you guys when they first, one of my favorite scenes, when they all the whole family gets together, and Ollie, I imagine this is what it's like when you guys go to like the grocery store. He packs his whole family into the wagon. They go to the general store, and the wife picks up this mason jar and she goes, my, what will they think of next?
I did have a giggle at that bit. But at the same time, very much on the nose of, you're like, oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, for where it's set and when it's set, that's like, would you look at this?
Yeah.
A mason jar.
My.
Ooh. Next thing you know, I'm going to have a vote,
Yeah. Well, hang on. She's like, I'm going to pickle so many things.
I'm going to make some jam.
Who is this Mason fella? That scene, can we talk about that scene? Because, man, incredible.
I mean, like, I really enjoyed the fight scene where Shane and Van Heflin, the rancher, go back to back and just beat the crap out of all of the...
they had an altercation prior to that at that same general store, which is the only general store, where he's buying a fresh pair of clothes and the guy pours his sody pop on him and he does nothing because and again, movies like this have conditioned me, like, this guy can fight, and you just know he's a badass because you've seen this story before.
But why didn't Shane fight, Mama? Shane didn't fight. Shane's not afraid, Mama. What's Shane gonna do? Did you know Shane's name is Shane? Shut up, child. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that yeah. Thanks again for ruining this movie. He, and then when they go back to this scene, he's like, you know what? You bought me a drink last time. This one's on me. And he just
Throws it in
there's
his
a thing
face.
on him, and then punches him so hard it launches him 40 feet into a different room. And it was
Through the
like
doors.
the
you know?
most comical pratfall. It was fucking incredible. Like,
and then it became like
great.
a WWE wrestling match.
Yeah.
Just chairs and tables, and it's again like
for so long. Like
it's and you're like, oh, it's just every Western from this point on.
The best part about that fight scene is interspersed throughout it. It keeps cutting back to Lil Joey with this comically huge, like peppermint candy cane, and he's just like dumb-eyed, like. And then there was another bit where they're throwing chairs, and Joey's peeking out the corner. He almost gets hit with a glass bottle, and they look like they were really launching bottles at this kid. To a point, I'm like, yes.
Funny enough, I was doing a little bit of reading, and like that final scene where like Alan Ladd's like saying, "All right, little Joey, I gotta go." Shane, don't go. Is there any time like Alan Ladd's performing his like these important lines, the kid is getting cross-eyed and sticking his tongue out to the point that Alan Ladd actually had to say to the kid's dad, "Get this kid to do what he needs to do, or I'm gonna thump him in the head."
Yes.
Like, I bet. I mean, I understand. There was method acting right there. He's like, I'm out. I'm cool.
All right. Well, getting kicked in the head by a horse is not considered method acting. This kid. Jesus.
Though, I've got a couple of interesting bits as well. First of all, so Alan Ladd is like, so Shane is a legendary gunslinger. And there's this moment in the middle of the movie where he just like demonstrates that he's incredible. He shoots this like rock like 5 times. Pew, 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 pew. It was amazing. Bang, bang, bang. Oh my God, the amount of times that kid shouted bang. Oh, I wanted to. Anyway, interestingly enough, to get the shot of him shooting took 116 takes. Alan Ladd is very, very not cool with guns. If you'll look at that scene, he's an amazing shot because he's doing it with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
And in that final gunfight, you notice that he's not pointing the gun anywhere near the guy that he shoots. He must have rebounded it off the wall.
It would have been more efficient just to throw the pistol at him.
But then, and then the other one is Jack Palance is not comfortable with horses, which for me was like, what? So it's the reason that he was originally supposed to gallop into town, but because he looked ridiculous on the horse, they had to make him walk into town. But in retrospect, George Stevens made it a lot more intimidating. It's just this guy in no rush. Because let's be honest, as soon as he turned up, I was like, oh shit, this is dangerous guy. But also, he couldn't get on or off his horse, so they managed to get him to do it once really well. And George Stevens used that version, that take, reversed to get him onto horses, and used it multiple times because it was the only time that he managed to get on a horse and not look like an idiot. And I was like, get out of town!
Oh, I couldn't even tell.
Wow. That's incredible. They also had to put peanut butter in his mouth to make it look like he was stopping. That was their other big technique. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up with another actor. I forget.
That's great.
Like, what else? I mean, anything else in this movie that like stands out? Because it's kind of hard to describe to people at home without just saying you have to kind of watch it.
Yeah.
It's just because so much of it is just the it of it, the watching of it, the way it is shot, the very realistic nature. Apart from, like you said, that one very obvious scene which is done on a soundstage, because you can just tell because every other shot has got Wyoming all the way in the background for 100 miles,
I for sure thought something was going to happen to the father, and that just because, again, it's a very well wrought story, but because this is the first one, none of that really happens. I thought Shane was going to step in and become the new daddy in town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think
for sure he was going to get with
because there was some chemistry between him and the mother for sure.
Yeah,
which was
100%. And it's almost just like even like the kid's saying it as he's riding away. He's like, Shane, my mom wants you to stay. I'm like, I think she does actually, buddy. I think it's like the guy, takes his shirt off and like, my other thing's like, so there's that great scene right at the beginning where Van Heflin, Joe, the dad, has this like for years been dealing with this huge tree stump which is in the middle of his homestead. And I'm like, bro, I would have built my homestead 20 feet to the left.
Right. seems like such an avoidable problem.
No, but like a typical man, he's like, no, I can get this. I can get this.
And he's been telling his missus, "I'll get it done. I'll get it done." It's
You
2
and that
years
stump.
later.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, you're right, Ollie. That's like one of those situations where it's like, if only we had the space to build this ranch. There's literally
Yeah.
nothing around for miles. Like,
Nope,
Yes.
this is where we're
Right.
steading, baby.
Right? And it's a stump that must have been a tree that was 300 feet high. And I go, look around you. Do you see any other fucking trees?
Right. Yeah.
It was-
And it's not like he's using modern tools to pull that out. He's literally just trying to like push it like gingerly.
Yeah.
But then old strong Shane comes along and like the Fonzie just kind of hits to the side of it and the stump pops out.
Yeah.
Though, at the same time, I get what it's doing. It's showing how, like they said, they even say it, they spell it out in the movie. Sometimes it's like the blood, sweat, and tears is what's necessary. It shows the determination of these people to live out there. It shows Shane and Joe coming together, much like they do when they get into the fight scene in the bar. So I get the themes. I'm just being a dick about it. It's like...
No, it's practically a very odd scene. Because,
It's a metaphor, guys. Come on.
It's a metaphor for this rancher guy being kind of an idiot.
I wanted there to be a scene where they both look at it and they're trying to like get it out and they go, I'm stumped.
Studio audience breaks out in laughter.
Yeah.
They get freaked out because where's the studio audience coming from?
It cuts to Joey just. Is that his name? Am I getting that wrong? I don't think his name
It is Joey, right?
It's Joey in the movie, yeah.
So his father's name's Joe.
Yep.
And the boy's name is Joey.
Yep.
Yeah, this rancher's not like the brightest. He
No.
he probably didn't even realize it was his own name. He's like, I don't know, I'm gonna name him Joey. That seems like a good name for some reason.
Joey. God damn this fucking kid. I knew this was gonna happen. I knew it was gonna happen.
Well, what else? I mean, the thing is, like I said, my wife, I thought she knew it she goes, oh, it's a classic Western. I'm like, all right. And the thing is, like, my mother-in-law, she loved Westerns. She's just, her whole life is just every day she watched Westerns, old black and white Westerns and Gunsmoke and everything like that. So very much in my wife's family, like Westerns are a thing, but it was actually my wife just waiting until I was done because she knew the first thing I was going to do was rant about that kid.
I bet you ask anyone in your family, like, love Shane, hate the kid. That's just like, that's the one sentence review.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I mean, like, like we've been joking about it, right? Like ruin the movie, but it doesn't. It kind of like, it's almost just like at some point you're just like, can someone act like the family from Close Encounters and threaten that child with a beating? Because
you want to live to see 9? Yeah, no, that was great. There was some dubious connections between those two movies as I watched them like back to back, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, well, I agree because yes, that's what's so fun about doing this podcast, and there being 3 movies as well, is that you do see some of these overlaps and crossovers from different generations and different movies. I mean, like, this is what's cool about this one is we've got a 1953 movie, a 1977 movie, and a 2017 movie. Yeah. And, but you can see Shane's influence on the neo-Western, the stuff that Taylor Sheridan is doing. I mean, how different is Sicario? I mean, the mysterious gunslinger, being Benicio del Toro, and it's like, to come in and it's all those elements are there that I honestly feel stupid that I hadn't seen Shane or really heard of it. I said, like, Will, you really have been educating me in these classic old movies, because they really have affected cinema for decades after.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's really my grandfather's influence, because he loved Westerns, took me to movies all the time. And so that's how I ended up seeing like a whole bunch of these old like movies. And I will say most of the older ones are not good, only because like as they went on in time, they got better and better. Even the very few that get made these days are still better than like 99% of the Western.
I can only assume that, that the Western genre was so popular that much like modern day, like if they did a fucking multiverse back then, people would have lost their shit.
Yeah.
But like, I bet these movies became so saturated, the genre, that it was so hard for one in particular to stand out until, then you get to like that Clint Eastwood era.
Yeah.
And again, they just got so popular. But now you have, with the influx of every like superhero and spinoff and this and that, I wonder if people were just like I'm fucking sick of cowboys, man.
Well, 100%, because like even every TV show was, my dad growing up, he said everything was cowboys and Indians. You know, when I was running around with my brothers, it was cowboys and Indians. And it's like, I like that you brought that up because, like I said, I almost brought Unforgiven to the table. I almost see that as kind of like the bookends. Shane on one end and Unforgiven on the other, basically exactly the same movie. Yeah. But in the middle, you've had all of those different Westerns, like you were saying, the Westerns that become, oh, you got to have the car chase because it's the horse chase. And there's, the gunfights all over the place. Whereas like Shane has 1 second of gunfight, as does, Unforgiven. Whereas in the middle, it got out of control. And then you had the spaghetti Westerns and you had Sergio Leone and you had all that other stuff. Then I'm like, I think that the life of the Western kind of went from there to Unforgiven, and then we get into the area of the neo-Western, the stuff that Taylor Sheridan, started off.
But between those, they went from Western cowboys to motherfucking aliens. Starting with Alien.
And then, but you're not wrong. And then
actually,
and then,
technically, it was Close Encounters, and then Alien was after that.
Yeah, but like the last 15 years have been superhero movies, and then suddenly everyone's, Oppenheimer, Barbie, and now everybody's talking about, is it Gareth Edwards' movie, The Creator, coming? Like there's this completely original sci-fi movie, and it's everything now in marketing is the completely original, screenplay.
Everyone's clamoring for a new IP, and it's just like, I made a Star Wars movie with none of the Star Wars.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, what's that Zack Snyder one that's literally just Star Wars, but they scratched all the names out? What's that one that's coming out?
It's something like Flower Moon or something like that. Yeah. It's a two-parter that's coming to Netflix.
Sucker Punch 2.
Oh, God.
Still sucking.
I'm lobotomized. Gee.
I like that movie.
Rebel Moon.
Yeah,
Rebel Moon.
Yeah, because Flower Moon is the Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, the Scorsese one, yes.
Yeah, which is coming soon, which of course.
And where does that take place? Where's that set? Because we might have to see it and then just do a special episode.
That's a great question. It's going to be Wyoming. You wait. Flower. But yeah, I mean, it's Killers of the Flower Moon. Everyone's like, it's just, I love that Scorsese in his sort of like, as he's getting, where he is, he's just like, I can make a movie 5 hours long. People are gonna watch this shit. It's like,
not wrong. He can make a movie that's like 6 days long. I'll be there.
Ooh, guys, this is good because we haven't got there yet. It's taking place in Oklahoma. Nice. So maybe we wait and we can do Oklahoma and we can actually talk about
Oklahoma.
But we'll leave Shane behind, and also thank it for its service.
Yeah.
So like I said,
well, I do briefly, because I know we were talking about this in text thread. It has my all-time favorite character type, which is Jack Palance's character, which is not the villain, but it's the number one right-hand man of the villain. And man, he does this so well. Like I said, the crime is that he's only in this movie for a short period of time.
He's so menacing, and he's got such scary cheekbones. And
he's one of those actors that, much like a Walter Matthau, like I've never seen this actor young, so it was almost jarring to me to see like this is what a young Jack Palance looks like. It's crazy to me.
I know,
kind of a smoke show. Not gonna lie,
kind of good looking, but like the very first initial look at him was I almost got that sort of uncanny valley de-aging technology,
right?
Like
well, he was 75 years old when they filmed this.
It's like they stretched his skin and gave him Botox, and then I realized no, he's just like 20 years old, because all I've ever seen of Jack Palance is old Jack Palance. That's why I grew up in Batman and Curly in City Slickers. So to see him like just without a line on his face,
it begs the question: is this a prequel to City Slickers 2 Curly's Gold?
Triplet. He's the third one.
Reply in the comments. Still Curly, baby.
I mean, this is where you really see the start of him becoming a big star. That would eventually lead to, everybody say it with me, Deathstalker and the Warriors from Hell. Oh, I thought you guys were going to say it.
I still retain. I remember him as the host of the TV show Ripley's Believe It or Not, and his voice is like so perfect for that. It was, but
he did Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah,
I thought that was Dean Cain.
I think he did the later one.
Yeah, he was after that.
Yeah.
That's the one I used to watch in Hong Kong.
He did the one in his living room that there were no cameras for. He claimed.
let's jump on over to the neo-western. So we're going to go from the old western to the neo-western. Let's jump into Wind River, a movie that I remember when it was announced, I was actually very excited about. You know, this is before Taylor Sheridan produced and wrote everything. It's before Yellowstone. It's before the Yellowstone verse. It's before we got into Mayor of Kingstown and Tulsa King and everything else that's going on. Like he has, I mean, you know, credit to him. He has become an absolute force to be reckoned with in the television and movie landscape. He is quite a prolific writer. I mean, because for me, I knew him as the sheriff from Sons of Anarchy. He was just this guy who had this sort of kind of interesting presence. He was an important character. And then just like really suddenly, spoiler alert, but in like season 3, just randomly gets run over brutally, just hit by a car, run over. And I'm like, I guess he's dead. And I was like, so I kind of look him up, and then it's because, oh, he's written a script, his first real screenplay, and it's Sicario, one of the greatest goddamn screenplays.
Like, I think for me, that it's like those 3 movies, and then everything else after that kind of gets a little watered down. Like, I think he became this brand, and to be fair, I'd never seen Yellowstone or any of those other shows, but I think once Sicario 2 hit, it was just kind of like, oh, okay. I
like Sicario 2, but it's not Sicario 1. It's like, you know, it's one of his scripts without the you know, the hand on the wheel that is Denis Villeneuve, which is you know, and Roger Deakins. You know, I mean, that's going to elevate anything. But so yeah, and then because his second one, Hell or High Water, as well, he just wrote that. It was directed by a Scottish director whose name is escaping me right now.
I just looked it up the other day, and it's totally left my mind.
Yeah, he did that.
He hasn't really directed anything else of note.
Yeah, he did the and did another movie with Chris Pine. It's the Warrior King thing or whatever. Like it's that Scottish King movie, which was on Netflix, which was not very good. I have to be honest. It was okay, but when it was like written and directed by Taylor Sheridan, I was like, okay, I hope he can direct a movie. Was my initial thought. And when I saw Wind River, I thought it was excellent. Yeah. I think it is. I think it is excellent. I think he uses Jeremy Renner just right. You know, Jeremy Renner, he came out of nowhere for a lot of us, and he kind of just took over when he did the Iraq movie. Come on, help me out here. He's the bomb disposal guy.
Oh, Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker. There we go. Yeah, Catherine Bigelow's Hurt Locker. Where everyone was just like, who's this funny looking guy? And like, he's really good. And he's funny. I honestly, I love Jeremy Renner in so many things that he does, but I think this kind of role for him is like ideal. The grizzled, depressed. He's just got that voice and this timbre in his voice and tone that I think is great. What do you guys think?
I think he's got a lot of pain behind those eyes.
you know.
But yeah, no, I think this is maybe the second or third time I've watched this movie, and he is. I mean, everyone is really fantastic in this. I think he's very well cast. And my only thing watching it again, I'm like, would it have made more sense? I guarantee this movie wouldn't have done nearly as well if he were like a Native American actor doing the same thing. Like, would this movie be a little bit more relevant if he wasn't just like a white guy?
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. It's a little bit like, oh God, what's that Elysium with Matt Damon, where it's like you watch that movie, and because of the nature where that movie takes place, it's like, why is this guy like not Mexican? Like, why is this guy a white guy? Other than to like, obviously studios are like, people won't go see it otherwise. Yeah.
And it didn't detract from this movie at all. It was just something I was thinking for like the context of this podcast, because we're always trying to be more inclusive and be respectful. And I was wondering this, like just watching this time, like I think it would have been way more prescient if he were a person of color, like as an actor, you know, in this role. But
we do try to be respectful, except when it's involved talking about that stupid kid from Shane.
Yeah,
that kid could get bent, but okay, I get it. I'll get it out.
Them kids.
but
no, I totally agree. This movie, I think, needed to have that perspective, or at least just have like a Native American leading man in that role.
Yeah, because I think in relevance to the story, you know, it never pops up that he's like a white boy. You know, it's like everyone's already accepted him into this work, this like their culture and their families, and it's just accepted. Whereas there's no pushback where he's, you know, and again, we've glazed over the plot, which is very sad.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but think about that during my rewatch.
Well, I can totally get. I mean, like, the reason I will agree with you on that one as well is that the sort of like white government outsider character is Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah.
And so we get all that she doesn't understand. We get all that like, they're talking in their native dialect, so she doesn't understand. And that it's kind of like the eye roll of, oh, look how the government, look how they perceive this problem. They've sent a 22-year-old, like, rookie.
She's a baby,
out. But the thing is, what I really like is that Elizabeth Olsen's character is an extremely capable agent. That in the movie, she's like, if it comes down like to a gunfight of some kind, when you cut, she's an incredible shot, eyes wide open. She's like, naive only because in a way that tactically she's not experienced. She hasn't spent a lot of time out on these kind of things, but the decisions she make, the conclusions she make, the amount of dedication she has, and her skills as an agent, I was like, she's a great, like, strong female character. I was like, I really dug that about her.
You're rooting for her for sure. You know that she's. I mean, the second she arrives, that she's way out of her depths. Like I think she comes from Vegas by way of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And they just like look at her and like, oh man, she doesn't have the clothes, and
you're gonna die.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
You go outside.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Let's talk about the really uplifting story. This movie starts with the death of a native woman running across and just dying in the exposure. We don't know what's happened. So essentially, much like happens terrifyingly, in fact, this movie sort of says, based off true stories, because this is a story that happens far too often in the States and on reservations, but of just young girls disappearing. It's an epidemic in many ways. And so Jeremy Renner is basically, he's the fish and wildlife. He's a hunter, literally. His job is to go, it opens with the shooting of the wolf. I was like, I forgot, I was watching the movie and I was, oh shit, because it came so suddenly. I'm like, did they actually shoot that wolf? But he comes across the body, which then gets the FBI. The FBI sends Elizabeth Olsen. And it sort of comes down to sort of trying to solve this murder. Now, there's the underlying part is that it turns out that Jeremy Renner is such a broken human is because his own 16-year-old daughter disappeared on the reservation in very similar circumstances 3 years before, and it is an unsolved murder. It's completely destroyed his marriage, so we get that sort of scene with his ex-wife. It's all very tough. You just see, it is just pain. I mean, the thing is, it's like, and then it gets worse because Gil Birmingham, he's the father of the girl that died, played by Kelsey Asbiel Chow. She's from Yellowstone, by the way. Gil Birmingham, he's from Hell or High Water. Jeremy Renner, he's from Mayor of Kingstown. And in fact, two of the bad guys are also in Yellowstone and Mayor of Kingstown. So Taylor Sheridan, he likes actors. He brings them and uses them in all of his stuff.
And they're great. They're all great. Like,
very much so. But that, for me, the bit like definitely jumping ahead, but it's the moments of just Jeremy Renner coming to see Gil, the other father. Basically, he's like, I'm the only person that just understands because I know the pain that you're in. Just those bits will hit me.
Oof, that monologue was, man, that was
some freaking great acting. And the bit, like, you see the pain on I keep saying Gil. I hope that is how you pronounce it. It's Gil. If it's Jill, I'm sorry, but it's like, I'm going to keep saying Gil. But like, where he's just sitting in pain, and Jeremy comes and sits next to him and he goes, what's this? He goes, it's my death mask. He says, I just made it up because it's, it's that sad bit of like, no one's really able to taught me how to do it. It's never really been passed down. It's because our culture has almost been wiped off the face of the earth by your people. And it's like, it was just such a moment. I think this movie is like, it's for as quiet and sort of like dark as it is really, really good to watch. Like, you're watching it, you're just constantly like, this movie's.
It's a great movie that I just never wish to watch again.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to put myself through that emotional turmoil, because this isn't like a happy-go-lucky fun movie where you gather your friends around and show. This isn't a Miami Connection here, folks. This is a grim tale.
Well, it's not even like Hell or High Water, which I think that one is fun to watch with a lot of people.
It's a cool little heist movie, and you're kind of rooting for them.
It's a classic two guys robbing banks Western, just in modern times.
But to
Yeah, and
support
it's
their
really-
mother's
Yeah.
it's
a
medical
great.
bills.
It's to buy back. It's basically robbing the banks of their own money to buy their own thing back from the bank who's screwing them over. It's like a true Texas story.
Yeah.
And
Like,
is it
one.
Jeff Bridges that's tailing them?
That is.
With Gil Birmingham, that's his partner.
Yeah. Right.
That he's always just giving. It's like he's either giving Mexican digs or Native American digs, and it's like through the whole movie. Like it's like. I like you. It's fine. But Wind River. What's really cool about Wind River as well is I really like the way that they do it. That there's this mystery that needs to be solved, and they've followed the clues, and it all leads to this kind of like industrial thing. Is it a drilling? It's sort
drill
of
site. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like its own sort of private land. It's owned by a company, and on it there's like 5 or 6 guys whose job is just in the wilderness to make sure things keep ticking over. Right. And we're like, oh, this is interesting. We're following the clues, and we get to the door, and then it cuts, and it fills in all the blanks.
Which I mean, thank you for bringing that. It's that shot of her walking up to the door to knock on it because you think they finally found the guy who did it, her boyfriend, right? Who they suspect is the reason for this murder. And she knocks on the door, and it cuts to John Barenthal like walking to, and you're like, oh shit, he's the one, but it's not that at all.
Yeah. Suddenly the door opens and reveals the young lady who dies at the beginning, and it sort of then plays out this really sweet scene. You get like these little snippets of details, like for him talking about being Navy. So you're like, oh, he's a former Navy SEAL. It's talking about how they're like she wants to get out and all this kind of stuff that's coming in, and then it's just the sound of a bunch of snowmobiles turning up outside, and you can hear a group of men, and they're drunk, and you just get that sinking feeling, and that scene just keeps building and building and building, and then it escalates, and then it escalates to an attack, and then it escalates to then a rape, and then it escalates to him. John Bernthal's character just basically taking all of them on. Yeah. But we then realize that at that same time, we've had Jeremy Renner find that body. So then we all just start putting 2 and 2 together. These guys murdered him.
It's like you already see the end point, and getting there is so much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I had when we were coming up to that, when the guys came back to the shack, because I'd seen this before.
Sure.
I remember that, and I was like, I'm skipping. I'm not watching that. I can't do it. So I had to skip to past that whole scene because I'm like, I can't watch it.
Yeah, I actually rewound it because it was hilarious.
Just kidding. It's a tough scene. Played so well, but I also find that the way that, because we were so tense before, like I said, because we turned up, when we're on the original sort of A plot, turning up to that bit, there's a lot of tension, and all the guys have come up, and we see that they've got bruises and scratches and scrapes, and that all gets explained again in the flashback. But those extra sort of deputies they brought with them, one of them's like, do you not see what they're doing? Yeah, they're surrounding us, everyone, it's a lot of tension. Then we see this other scene that's just brutal and gives us all the details, and then we cut back, and then it just all goes tits up. It's just like this. Suddenly she's shot. Everyone's getting shot, and it's like, I think it's a brilliant, a way
much like that, the tension in Sicario.
Yes.
He does the same kind of thing. We're almost, because we've already seen that, you're almost expecting something horrible to happen, and it does. But the way it unfolds really subverts your expectation because of that whole thing where she walks up to the door, and you think, that goes into the whole flashback sequence. And they're like, hey, Paul, there's an FBI agent standing right in front of the door.
In front of the door.
And then she goes, much like the punch in Shane, she goes flying 40 fucking feet. And
that's Shane who punched through the door. That's why that happened.
The shootout, and it happens so immediately, and because they're all pretty much 6 feet away from one another. It's fucking brutal, though. It's brutal.
But it's realistic. Nobody's hitting each other.
No, it's shocking, and they're jarring. The guy's hit on the ground. He's reloading, and oh man, they all. But then you get, because Jeremy Renner is simultaneously scouting this scene out, but also he's on a mission to find a family of mountain lions
Yes.
as the crux of the beginning of this thing.
Yeah.
And he does find them, and he's like, "I'll come back for you."
Yeah.
But
We'll get to murder you
man,
later,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
have to go and take care of business. But then,
Oh, and that scene with his rifle just launching these guys. I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole thing is the payoff of them getting their comeuppance for doing these horrible things.
yes, their uppance has come, very much so, because they do get kind of like the upper hand. A lot of the officers go down. Graham Greene's character, he's down. He dies. Like Elizabeth Olsen, thank goodness she's wearing a bulletproof
And
vest.
apparently the only one wearing a
Yeah. Well,
Right.
maybe everyone else got shot in the head.
Right, fair.
But yeah, is that then sort of like the guy that the worst of the perpetrator, the guy that initiates
think.
the assault
Pete?
on the woman. He's the one that's kind of left alive, and Renner, because it was kind of this thing that he promised Gills Birmingham's character of just like, when you find him, I don't want this guy coming back. And he goes, I'm a hunter. You know, I'm not going out to arrest a guy. I'm going out here to kill this guy. And he does it in a beautiful place. It's like the highest mountain in Wyoming. Though I believe the mountain scenes, a lot of them were shot in Utah, though there was stuff shot in Wyoming. But he basically just takes him up to the top, takes his boots off, and he's like, I'm giving you the same opportunity you gave her. You can get
6 miles.
yeah, 6 miles barefoot if you can make it, but you're not going to make 300 yards, and he just lets him just die on the mountain. And again, it's like other movies, kind of like we're talking about with Shane, is that would take this and make it a massive gunfight, would make it like there'd be some sort of like cheesy monologue. In this case, it's just Jeremy Renner, he's just got that force in his voice. He's very authoritative. When he plays it so well. And he's just, yeah, if you want to survive, you can go do it. But tough titties, buddy.
Yeah.
You played your hand, and now I'm here to cash in your chips.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't like an action. There's two like clumsy action sequences in this, but still seeing and still getting the payoff of him, catching the guy and doing all that. It still feels so unfulfilling, because of the tone of this movie. Like, something horrible like this is going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as history has said, and it makes it that much tougher of a watch,
Yeah, because we've just kind of got if you can call it catharsis of that sort of revenge moment in a way. And then as the movie's sort of ending, it goes, isn't there like a crawl just going like, there are 6,000 unsolved cases, and you're just like, oh man, like this is, it's almost like, you like that the movie was made, and it's like it's making a good point, but there has been, I know, Will, you and I talked about it, like a little bit of like at times since then, Taylor Sheridan has almost patted himself on the back for like, you're welcome,
Yeah. So I've got the quote here, where he's talking about it, and he's like, this has existed since the invention of the reservation system. But in the past 15, 20 years, it's exploded. And this is a direct quote. And it gets no attention, which is the motivation for writing this film. And that kind of ignores a lot of Native American groups that have been shouting about this for a long, long time. There's actually I want to make sure I get the name right, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women movement. A lot of tribes in America and Canada bring attention to it. It's like, you'll notice like the Red Hand Day, there'll be a red hand kind of painted over the face of Native American women to help raise attention for it. I think there's 2 days out of the year they kind of talk about it. It's in February and May every year, but they've been talking about this forever. And I think if I could be charitable to Sheridan, what he means to say is, in media, it's not really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this movie helped because it's a white person saying it. The media is like, oh, is this a problem? I'm going to be charitable and say that's what he kind of meant to say. But yeah, the interview makes it sound like, hey, look at me, I brought attention to this. And
you can only hope that he had the clout in some capacity to like you said, raise awareness for this just even a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think I part of it as well is because there was a more recent interview. The thing is, because the Taylor Sheridan of Wind River is very different to the Taylor Sheridan of now, who is like the king of television. He's worth
wipes his tears away with $100 bills.
Yeah, he's worth a gajillion dollars, and he's made some extremely successful. Like Ryan, you would love Yellowstone. It is actually
Yeah.
quite the guilty pleasure. It is quite fun
Yeah.
because Kevin Costner as well.
I've been meaning to.
But Mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy Renner is the one that I'm very on board with. It's been
Which
very
is different from the Mayor of Easttown with
yes.
That's not the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, that's the HBO one with Kate Winslet. But I would say, yeah, and I've heard that Tulsa King, my brother, is like, you know, if you like what Taylor Sheridan does, his TV shows are fun. They are good. They are full on. They are violent. They are, you know, all that stuff. But it's like, I think, you know, for me, as those first three, as an introduction, I mean, like, you know, because what I'm trying to say is that this was his first directing go. It's, you know, so like for him to come out and do a movie that is like quite dark, and he's trying to do something and say something important, and there's a huge risk on his career for doing it. You know, I think retrospectively now people see Taylor Sheridan in his cowboy hat and his $100 million going, oh yeah, buddy, whatever. Whereas back then that was a risk. It was a risk, and he was, you know, so.
And what I'll say for him is I have very complicated feelings about Sheridan because I like a majority of his work. I think, you know, Sicario, Hell or High Water, I think is fantastic. That's my favorite of the three. I love Sicario though. But you know, so I'm a fan of his work, and I'm grateful to Yellowstone because my friend Arya is an actor on it. It's shown up just a couple times, but so it's employed a friend of mine, so I'm happy about that. But overall, you know, the Hollywood Reporter interview, I'll just say, or Hollywood Reporter interview, I'll say, really kind of made me roll my eyes. He kind of like plays it off like I do everything and no one can tell me what to do, and you know, I write things the way I want. Meanwhile, he's doing that and pissing off Kevin Costner while he's doing it, not delivering scripts on time, not trusting other writers to come in. And so I'm like, maybe there's something about your process, dude, that isn't working for your actors. So I don't know. At the same time, you can't take away that he's extremely talented and a good writer. But
and prolific. I mean, he does write a lot. You know,
it's crazy. I mean, when they announced that whole, is it Paramount Plus? He's got that whole deal where, I mean, he's got show after show. I don't know if he's writing all of it. It's just probably
he is.
He's writing all of it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Here's what I said. He could be writing it. I don't want to be caught making any comments, but he could be writing all of it. Knowing how television is done, I don't believe him.
He's just in the room.
But I would not be shocked. I mean, Rod Serling, you know, from Twilight Zone, was known to be like a writing machine who wrote all the time. He needed other writers to come in and help him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, there's just not a writer who is better than Rod Serling at this. Well, so that could be wrong. He could very well be doing it on his own. I'm very doubtful.
And there is a reason that writers are striking right now. You know what I mean? It's all about actually getting credit for the work that is done.
Now, let me ask you this, though. In terms of this, just to get back on track a little bit, the Wyoming aspect of this movie, now going from Shane to this, I love that it depicts a very different side of that state that is normally never depicted. You know, you get this, like, I mean, we were talking about the end of LA. I could have sworn this took place in Alaska for some reason. I think I was mixing it up with that with a different movie, but
yeah, it's definitely out cold. Yeah. I'm sure Zach Galifianakis was in this at some point, right? Elizabeth Olsen's going to get in a hot tub. No, this is not this movie.
A shocking lack of hot tubs in this movie. No, but it paints that different picture. And I don't know how much of it was filmed in Wyoming, but you know, I think we picked three very different movies at different eras that depict this state in a very different way.
Well, yeah, it is. It's because it's almost in whiteout, almost the entire movie. And it sort of does give you, it's the underlying thing of, see, like Shane is, we want to be out here and against the elements, and we want to sort of like live and fight on this land. Whereas like the other side of this one is that it gets into the idea of it being very desolate and the kind of place that can kill you if you don't understand it. And when it snows, when the weather changes, this is a very dangerous place, very desolate. And then you add on the sort of the reservation sort of side to it as well, which is like the poverty and the fact that they're just abandoned by this government that doesn't even consider
you get a bigger scope of the culture, even though it sheds a light on just how bleak that can be for some people. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Versus-
so those guys the guys that end up murdering, one of their coworkers and attacking his girlfriend is because they're just like, their whole sort of thing is just
they're
like,
bored. They're fucking
oh
bored.
yeah, I'm in the middle of nowhere and there's no women and I'm just going
Yeah.
crazy. And it's like,
After like the fifth circle jerk, you got to go into town and
First 4 were fine, but
yeah,
yeah.
it gets tiring.
I think like there was another little sort of reaction against it as well. For example, like the lead, the girl that dies at the beginning, who was one of the main characters in Yellowstone, Kelsey Asbil Chow. There was some like, you may have noticed from the name, Chow, not Native American. You know what I mean? So there was a little bit of criticism of bringing in characters who weren't native to play native characters when there's not exactly a shortage of people that can play these roles.
Right.
So that again is another criticism, but I have to be honest, we're only bringing that, but that's just nitpicking. We're nitpicking because it's like, honestly, nothing and no one is perfect. And like, if you just want to just watch this movie as a movie, it is an exceptionally well-made movie telling a great story very well.
We're doing our best with what the studio would allow us to do.
I mean, I guess that's one way of putting it, but let's take that as a great segue, what the studio will allow us to do. And let's jump over to the one that I brought to the table, which is, a classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977, Steven Spielberg. But because this is where he cashed in his first blank check, which is another great podcast if you listen to that. Yeah. But it's because Jaws had blown up, just blown up the world, much like Jaws blows up at the end of Jaws. Spielberg sort of like, he had been wanting to make this movie, and it was like the studio were like, okay, and then initially it was going to be a $2.7 million budget.
The studio was like, all right, so we're going to do 2 sharks this time, right? He's like,
space.
Yeah.
But
in a way,
he ended up making it for just under 20 million. Almost like, thank goodness it was a massive financial success, because it could have completely destroyed the studio. But if you haven't seen this movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg, Richard Dreyfuss, Melinda Dillon, Terry Garr, Francois Truffaut.
Frankie Truffles, baby.
that's everybody knows him as that, Frankie Truffles.
I saw that name. I'm like, whoa, the director? Like, the cloud of Spielberg to be like, I got it. We're gonna get Francois Truffaut.
The fact that it's like one of the first names that comes up is like Francois Truffaut even names his character, that it's like such a like a thank you very much. But it's interesting that, like, as I was getting into reading a little bit about it, like, initially Spielberg first considered doing a documentary about people that believed in UFOs. And then I'm watching this movie, a movie that I've seen so many times, especially when I was younger, and a movie that I haven't actually watched in probably over 10 years at least.
Same, yeah.
When I was watching it, was realizing, that was my little note that I took. I go, it feels like a documentary.
Yeah.
This movie feels so different. I remember, because it's not E.T. It's not that sort of classic Spielbergian like romp of adventure romp. It's sort of very real, very scary in times. And like, I mean, one thing we're really going to have to get into in a minute, but it's about like the completely dysfunctional, messed up family that Richard Dreyfuss is in, like this 80s family where the mum threatens the children with beatings all the time and everyone is screaming and he's not really paying attention. Then she abandons him and he goes off with another woman. And I'm like, whoa, this is all
really crazy. Fun. Yeah. And when you watch every Spielberg movie now through the lens of like the Fablemans, and you're like,
right. Yeah. Okay. I even said, like, while we were watching it, I was like, yeah, I wonder if Spielberg comes from a family of divorce. I'm getting that vibe.
Yeah. What gave it away?
Movie, I'm sure we'll get to the ending of this movie. Like, took me, I'm like, wait, what?
Here's my question: which version did you guys watch?
I didn't know there were more than one.
There's 3 versions. Yeah.
Oh God. Each one longer than the last.
Well, actually, no. The opposite. The director's cut and special edition are actually 3 minutes shorter.
Only 3 minutes? I think you could charitably cut 2 hours out of this movie and not miss anything.
I don't know, but I love this movie opens with like the most Indiana Jones inspired opening. It's so good. They're in Sonora, Mexico, or like something like that. The
Yep,
Sonoran Desert.
they're in the Mexican desert.
And
yeah.
it just like sets the tone for it. It's just rewatching a Spielberg movie, and I'm watching like how he moves the camera around, and
It's amazing.
It's so unbelievable.
Yeah, I was having all of those reactions too. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, there's a reason. I mean, we were talking very similarly about Jaws. It's like this guy just knew it from the beginning. And it's like, yeah, very much where they find all of these old World War II fighter jets just in the middle of the desert. And there's so much show not tell. There's so much kind of like
much like Jaws. They're like, all you see is really like reaction shots of people, like close-ups on their face, or just it's stunned. Like when you get the face of the little boy when he's in the kitchen, he's just like but you as a viewer, you're like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. What is he seeing?
That's when I texted you guys the picture, because, you know, as much as I have been ranting about the kid from Shane, you know, you then juxtapose it with some of the best face acting of a child in a movie ever. Like that kid with no dialogue walks in, is blown away because clearly he's looking at an alien, then has a face of wonder and then joy. And I'm like, give that kid an Oscar.
Yeah. And but then you get the worst mother on the planet coupled with that.
It's true. I mean, that kid, he was such a presence and such a good actor that Kubrick wanted him for The Shining. He's like, I want that kid.
I can see that.
And then it didn't work out because that kid was in too much demand.
Yeah.
You know.
The mum, Melinda Dillon, also the mum from A Christmas Story. It's very 80s mum, as in like, and you know what? Really quickly as well, this kid has toys that I was jealous of for my entire childhood.
Yeah. Everything had batteries in it.
And they
batteries
all
were included.
And they're big, like, you know, metal police cars and stuff like that. I'm like, why don't I have cool toys like that? Even now, I'm like, I wish I had that police car. It's cool as shit. But this movie, it's shot incredibly. Like, I just love, like you're saying, the Indiana Jones-esque beginning of that, and then we kind of get the guy, the cartographer. That's the little thing that pays off.
My favorite, Bob Balaban. I love him.
You know, he's just there to translate. But there's that scene ends with they do a wipe, but they do it with sand.
Sand.
You know, it just took us out of that scene. I go, wow, like and the challenge of shooting that scene like that must have been an absolute bloody nightmare. Yeah. And then like they literally went to India and they got that really cool shot of like, where did this sound come from? And all the fingers come in.
Yeah,
great shot. You know, finding that boat in the middle of nowhere in Mongolia.
Which I assume that was either a matte painting or a miniature that they shot in forced perspective.
I think it was everything looked.
Yeah, everything in this movie looked so good. And I know I say that all the time, but you miss that era of this practically done effects to a point where they don't even use the word computer in the credits at all. It's all photography effects, which is so great.
I think one of my favorite shots I've always remembered, and I was watching it, I'm pretty sure, so I realized it must have been a miniature, but it's a shot of Richard Dreyfuss's truck just driving across the country, and you get the shadow of the UFO.
Oh yeah, I was wondering. But even like how they did the clouds bleeding in, like how like it's. So
I wanted
cool.
to talk about that. That's where, because that's what we're going to talk about right now, is because 1977, much like we were talking about Blade Runner with Carrie, is that like it's a movie that looks better than movies made today, and it's because they are using. And I still go back to kind of what I was saying in the Blade Runner episode of like, when you are limited by, be it situation, budget, or the time constraints, or the time that you're in, you get creative. And the effect of those clouds coming down like outside that house, and the lighting that's going on inside the clouds. And then, you know, when we finally, you know, get that, you know, they don't do the Jaws of it. They don't hide the UFO until the very end of the movie. You know, we actually get them in that sort of first scene with Richard Dreyfuss of like, it's on top of him. We see
that shot of the lights pulling up behind his car and then like lifting up. Oh yeah.
And the fact that they just established that 2 minutes before of wave it around. And then you get that next brilliant special effect of like gravity not suddenly going weird in his truck.
Everything just kind of lifts up.
So and you know they're doing it by rotating the truck, but they've got the lighting fixed in the background, so you don't feel like the car is rotating. It's such a brilliant, incredible effect that through this whole movie, I'm like, how do they do it so well then? And people fuck it up all the time now. Is that question for me is like, how have we not learnt that these things are just better when you do it like practically, when you do it with miniatures, when you get out there and just design something for real.
Studio interference.
Well,
Sorry.
because you back then you had to pay artists because there were like actual, they were actually like working on the stuff. These days you can put it all under CG effects.
Yeah.
You can bankrupt a VFX studio and just move on to the next one and underpay them the entire time. And you just meet. So it's better for the studio, but yeah, it doesn't lend itself to very memorable scene.
I was thinking that too, even towards the end. I'm like, God, if this were made today, it would just all be CGI and it would just feel like lifeless versus having these huge matte paintings and miniatures with the sound and the lighting. There's something just a CGI scene just can't capture.
Well, the word you just used right there was perfect. Is lifeless. It is, and because this movie feels alive. I mean, I'm still flabbergasted that during that night scene, when the UFOs are kind of popping up all over Indiana, and Richard Dreyfuss is kind of like chasing them down, the light, the way that they emanate light onto the things around them, it's just onto people's faces as things go by, that it just you convinced me they were there.
This movie is the reason we have the intro to the Wraith. You gotta understand.
100%.
I think you even said that.
Yeah.
On our Arizona episode, it feel like watching that again. I'm like, oh man, I gotta watch the Wraith again.
Yeah, it's the little red dot from Close Encounters.
Yeah,
it's the little white dot from the beginning of the Wraith as it sort of jets. So I've got my It's Wraithing Time T-shirt on. Right yeah, baby.
Nice.
Available on
we'll link to that on the YouTube channel.
We'll put it on our Facebook page. We'll put it on our Reddit as well. But yeah, it's great. I love this T-shirt. It's one of my favorite T-shirts.
It's a good one.
But yeah, I mean, this movie from just a beauty standpoint and a special effects, visual effects standpoint is incredible. What I had forgotten, kind of like I was saying, is how like it's the way it's actually done narratively and stuff like that. It's very confusing at times. Not that I don't understand it, but let's say whenever it's the family, it's just so much crosstalk, over talk, screaming.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's very disorienting. Like that first scene is like one of his sons is just in the background banging something to the point that I'm about to scream, and then he finally does. He's like, "Do you want to die? You're about to die."
I thought that was like funny. I didn't think of that as I didn't see that through a lens of dysfunction. I just thought he's a funny guy because he's got the line too. They're like, our dad said we can stay up and watch the 10 Commandments. And she goes, this is a 4-hour movie. He's like, I said they can watch 5 Commandments. I thought he died with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just thought he's just Richard Dreyfuss being.
But this quick banter, but it's like, it's not sort of focused. I mean, another scene that I think is particularly effective that anyone else would do way different is the the air traffic control scene where two passenger jets are coming in and they are seeing a UFO. And any other one would have shots of planes in the sky and the pilots inside and there's a light out there. The whole thing plays out on an air traffic control scene and via radio. So
and the way he framed that shot with all these guys and that like crams that frame.
You've got
they're all talking
guys
over
in shot, and you've got the guy doing the radio, and I'm trying to listen to him talking to the planes, but the two guys at the front of camera are having another conversation that, depending on which one you're paying attention to, you either hear that conversation or you hear that conversation. But like that's what I think like we said before, is Spielberg's so good at doing that. That's why a scene feels real. No one's waiting for their turn to talk. They're all talking. It's like
it's chaos. Like he did it in E.T. The family dinner scenes. Like you brought that up before. It just feels very natural. It feels real, like how real people would talk.
Right, but then it feels real because you hear these guys talking about what they're seeing, and so you're building it in your head, and you get that sort of distortion sound effect when the thing goes really close by. Whoa, that was close, and you kind of see it little blips on the screen. So for you, you're like, oh man, like this is what it would feel like. And then they go, I like that how it ends. Like, do you guys want to make a report? And they're like,
I don't know what
no, I don't even know what I would say.
Which it makes you think, I'm like, what are these people seeing? What are these alien ships doing to them, because they almost seem, because the tone and how they talk completely changes. You think they're being like brainwashed or something. Like
It's just, well, and I think it's very well timed for us to watch this because of all these UFO hearings and, like, you know, all these videos now of UFOs, and the government's going, yeah. And everyone just like went, okay. Shrugs.
Yeah, and they had the conference in Mexico now where the guy showed off super real, totally legit alien corpses.
paper mache dolls.
So I saw someone, you gotta love the
died
internet for moving at the pace that it does, because
the aliens in this movie somehow look more realistic.
Right.
And these are probably the weakest part of the movie, actually.
Yeah, I don't, and it's so funny. I don't remember. I'm like, watch this. I'm like, I haven't seen it in so long. I'm like, do you see the alien? Like, I thought they were just beams of light or something. I don't remember the ending very well of them, like all kind of shambling out, which is definitely just a bunch of little kids and alien costumes.
Children in Halloween costumes. Yeah, like, oh, look at the aliens. Like,
and then you've got the scary one that's got really long limbs that kind of like, you know,
just disappears.
Why?
Like, just,
and then the other one,
the Jesus one.
Yeah, so you got that one that like is very much like
I was almost, by the end of this movie, I was hoping for like a Mars Attack style thing where they all come out and just start vaporizing motherfuckers. And they like, here's your shitty kid, let's vaporize. I mean, it's fucking crazy. But again, like, and I'm not thinking in terms of this movie for Wyoming. I'm like, it really does take a long time, but it all spearheads at this point in Wyoming. Like, the crux of this movie is set there. I don't know why, but there it is.
Well, it's because, I mean, you know, what's really interesting as well is because everybody knows Devil's Tower because of this movie, you know, but like an interesting part of the plot of this movie is that, you know, this is the 80s, you know, there's no Wikipedia. So if you've never been to Wyoming or you've never read a magazine about travel, people are completely unaware of this sort of this icon, this thing that is just so easily recognizable, which is like, when I think Wyoming, and because of this movie, the first thing that pops into my head is Devil's Tower because of this movie. And it looks otherworldly. Like, I was getting into what the hell is this? And they're like, they've got all these theories of this lava tube that got pushed up and then eroded down over time, but it almost looks like it was made with mashed potato and fork, you know, down the side. It's got these really interesting striations that I mean, like, that, you know, I think, Ryan, you say this all the time, you know, take the state out of the movie. You know, if you took the Wyoming out of Close Encounters, you've taken the iconography. You're
right. Yeah, I was worried about that too. I'm like, only a brief portion of this takes place in Wyoming, but it's the core of the entire film, you know, like the setting of it.
It takes, I checked it out. It takes, like, in the version I watched, an hour and like 18 minutes to get to Wyoming. Or maybe an hour and 8 minutes, something like that, before we finally get there. It really is like Act 3 of the movie, which takes an hour and a half to play out. Like that. If I can get into that real quick, this is like the slowest movie like on the planet. There is probably 30 minutes worth of plot in this movie, and the version I saw is like close to 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, mine was 2:17 or something.
Yeah, it was something like that, and I was like, oh my god, this is like, that last hour was so rough. I was just, and it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous movie. It's brilliantly acted. But holy crap, there is like not enough story for this runtime. And what story is there is so weird. And like you were talking with the family and all that, the family just drops out of the entire thing. And it's almost like he's a totally different guy who has like who doesn't have a family. And he like, it's just, I don't know.
It's crazy to me.
So bizarre.
It's crazy. Then they're all drawn, like this handful of people are drawn to the Devil's Tower in Wyoming for reasons unknown for the aliens. And he gets there and it's fucking packed. And he just somehow bumps into Jillian, is her name?
Yeah.
Jillian.
I mean,
they just happen to see each other in this super crowded area. They embrace, and it's, again, worlds worst mother-father combo.
Well, I'd say
For
she's a
real.
mum that has traveled to Wyoming to get her son back. But like
Well,
when you talk about like when you actually step back, much like Will is pointing out, when you step back and just think about Richard Dreyfuss's character, he has lost his job. He's gone a little bit nuts. He's got like building stuff in his house. His wife and his children leave him, and then he's like, you know what? I'm leaving the galaxy. I'm dipping
yeah,
out on
yeah.
good
I'm
luck
out.
raising my 4 children. I'm off going to space. And you're like going, oh, what an interesting movie. Like when you think about it, wait a minute, you're a dick.
Yeah, sure. That caught me by surprise, like out of nowhere. I'm like, wait, what? He's going on the ship? He's gone?
Yeah.
Just straight up, I'm out.
Yeah, and like, throughout the whole film, he just becomes more and more obsessed with the aliens. And I'm sitting there the whole time wondering, like, well, then what are the aliens doing? They're just picking them up and just hanging on to them for a couple decades.
right.
And, oh, here you go, you're back. And they're gonna do what with Richard
Well,
Dreyfuss?
and because the people don't age, so maybe to them it's like a very short period of time.
Yeah, there is that line where like, oh, Einstein was correct or
Yeah.
something.
Einstein
but-
was probably one of them.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yes,
like
yes.
that. But like, even still, it's like, but what are they? Well, why?
What is
Like,
their
at the end of
mission?
the
What is
movie,
their mission? Yeah.
Yeah, he goes off to be with the aliens, and I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there like, so what did I just watch? Like, what is the point of
Right,
what I
right.
just saw?
They show up to put on the world's dopest concert. That's it. I always thought that the whole end scene,
like the Battle of the Bands.
yes,
Like,
I always thought the end takes place like inside the Devil's Canyon. Meanwhile, it's
Right.
just on the back. It's just on the back.
Right.
The one side no one thought to look at. But my favorite bit is, when they all go, the government has to figure out how to clear out this area because they know something's going to happen at this canyon. So they've figure out the greatest plan, and they're going through this list. It's like, I don't know, train derailment, anthrax. They go through all this. They come up with this sleeping agent that knocks everything out for 6 hours, right? So they're all on the helicopter and they're trying to figure out like what we're doing here. Richard Dreyfuss takes off his mask off. He's like, it's all bullshit. And the one guy's like, the air's better than LA. And they go through this whole thing and the dude gets gassed and he misses this whole thing that happens. I want this guy's story. He just wakes up the next day like, what did I miss? What? Oh, come on.
We're aliens.
Fuck. Wait, my whole life for this?
I love that scene where you're talking about they're going through like anthrax and all that, because one of them says, well, nobody would buy a plague.
Yeah, dude.
I was like, oh, give it a couple decades, buddy.
I loved it.
Oh my God.
Me too. The line was, you can't do that because there's always some Yahoo that thinks he's immune. And I went, well, that's a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
Have I got a story to tell
Cold
you guys?
COVID.
And this was 3 years after Jaws. This was
77.
77. No, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
77, right around
before
first Star Wars and stuff.
Was
like
this
that.
before or released before or after Star Wars?
But it's like, we had this, Star Wars, and Blade Runner all in the period of like 4 or 5 years where it just was like, this is what we can do with movies. Because like, Will, I get your point about there being like no plot, but and you kind of like, you're trying to get into the why. I think the point of the movie is the what. Are they real? The what if? It's more just like it's about that close encounter of the third kind. I was looking into the 5 types of close encounter. Like the first one is if you're 150 yards.
They had a horror movie come out called like The Fourth Kind, right? Or
the
something
fifth
like
kind. Now, fifth is when you get taken up onto the ship and experimented. So there are like 5 types.
Like Fire in the Sky. Great movie.
Oh my God, Fire in the Sky. That is a fucking movie, man. That one. That was Arizona, right?
Arizona, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife. That's I saw that one. That one shat me up, right?
Yeah,
proper good. So yeah, I mean, the thing about it, is, but it's also got a little bit of that thing that Spielberg is guilty of, forever, almost. Is his kind of like, his optimistic, rose-tinted glasses naivety, of here we have like the aliens coming down and the government is like, no one's trying to shoot them. It's not Independence Day. They're all smart scientists who just want to communicate and work together, which is like,
and they figured that out real fast. Like the communication thing, like almost immediately is like the sound waves and everything.
I like the bit. Yeah. I've always thought it. I want to know if you guys thought it, but did you notice any other famous theme being like,
Jaws at the end for
the
sure.
Jaws theme.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
When the alien
100%.
goes, and I go, is it? And they do it like 3 more times. I go,
Yeah.
oh, they're just doing a straight up Jaws
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
But my favorite capture,
They really like Jaws.
which I text you guys, the one character that stood out to me was the old crazy man who claims to have seen Bigfoot, who goes on to be Kevin McAllister's old man neighbor in Home Alone. I recognize that voice. And I'm like, no fucking way.
Deep cut, bro. Deep cut. But yeah, I like that guy.
That guy's always been old.
Yeah, it's exactly, yes.
But yeah, I mean, much like, right at the beginning when we first see him, he is just whistling on the side of a road in Indiana where this 3-year-old boy is just running in the street. Like, when you say worst mother ever, she can't keep up with this 3-year-old that just goes running through the Indiana countryside and ends up in the middle of a road.
I mean, this kid
the guy
is...
goes, sup? He doesn't go get the child out of the road. He just sort of whistles in his general direction.
Yeah. Oh man, that whole scene of her chasing after this kid, another equally shitty kid, but just way more charming. That's the whole point. Like, this kid gets abducted. This woman does barely anything to try and, like, I mean, maybe she's in shock. I don't know, but it just seems like she's really not doing her best, right? And then
single mom, man, it's not.
It's
easy
like
being a
the
single
alien,
mom.
like I said, the aliens show up at the end. They're like, "Here's your fucking shitty kid."
Take him back.
This kid sucks.
Yeah,
We got
he
the
was
Shane kid. We got the Shane kid back there. He'll do.
See, the overlaps with Shane as well. As I was saying to you guys, this kid might be annoying, but he's got excellent cardio.
Yeah.
Because he runs after Shane on a horse, runs the entire way, outruns a dog. I'm like, okay, this kid might be annoying, but he's got a future in long distance running. I tell you that much.
Yeah.
much like this kid from Close Encounters. But let's talk about, I think, what I think is the scene of Close Encounters. It's the one that I think you can see pictures of. It's just the abduction scene of the young boy.
Oh yeah.
Played out from inside the house with incredible lighting work going on, the practical lighting work, things going off, every machine kicking off, and it's just classic Spielberg-y sort of stuff. That I remember watching that as a kid, scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Like the way the screws are undoing themselves and stuff like that. Ooh.
I almost wish you Spielberg could have done just like a straight up horror movie. Like, I know you get glimpses of it in like this and Jurassic Park, and like all of his movies have, like, he's such a good horror director that you almost wish he would have done like a really good horror film.
Just go straight full on dark horror movie, the whole thing. I think he would be incredible because he's great at jump scares, but they're never like forced. You know what I mean? They don't even build up to it. He just gives you this. Like, one I've always liked is Richard Dreyfuss's jump scare when his flashlight.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great little moment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I totally agree. I mean, there's always those rumors. I don't quite believe it that he ghost directed Poltergeist, because Tobe Hooper is a great director.
I've heard those rumors too. But the thing is, you watch Poltergeist, it looks like Spielberg directed.
It looks like it, but I think Spielberg has too much respect for Tobe Hooper, who was an amazing director too. I don't quite buy the rumors, but yeah, you really do see like his horror skills in this, and same thing. I think that's the best scene in the whole movie. By far, is that it's so scary. It's so like
him opening the door is so iconic.
Yeah. Well, see, I was going to say, Will, I think it's one of the best scenes in movies.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
It's iconic.
It's right up there with Zach Galifianakis fucking the jacuzzi.
Exactly.
So very, very, very close 1 and 2.
Not quite that level, but it's right up.
The tension, the close-ups.
It's like in The Wraith, right?
You make a good point though. Like, structurally, it's not a great movie. Like, there's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces, and none of them quite fit together. But it does stick the landing, I would say, no pun intended.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it does it for me, because at the end of the movie, I was just like, why?
Yeah. If you want a better movie, just watch Batteries Not Included.
I love that movie, and I had that same goddamn thought when the aliens start coming down.
Because they just look like they use the same ships, but just shrunk them down a little bit.
I think that's the exact same thought that I had, and I was like, oh, I used to love that movie. I watched it all the time. I had it on VHS. That's one of my favorites.
So good.
It's a great movie that
Yeah.
often gets overlooked and nobody talks about it and it never turns up anywhere and it's on no streamers. I'm like, Batteries Not Included is a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you haven't
agree.
seen it,
Yeah.
check it out. Yeah.
The little bit where the little
Oh.
guy and he's trying to fix the building and he's putting his little foot down to put it at the end. No, I'm 100%. I'm just going to watch Batteries Not
Yeah.
Included today. That's
And
what
I'm definitely not crying.
Should we all watch it together in live text? That'll be great fun. There's so much. Like I remember, I was reading. Steve McQueen was Spielberg's first choice
For Richard Dreyfuss's character?
Richard Dreyfuss's character. And McQueen's like, I can't cry on cue. That's not the first time we've heard that with McQueen turning down a role. Is that McQueen's like, I can't cry. You know, I got to play cool roles. I can't cry. James Caan, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Gene Hackman all turned it down. Jack Nicholson declined it because of scheduling conflicts. And he goes, and he's like, while he was filming Jaws, Richard Dreyfuss talked me into casting him. So it's like, but I think Richard Dreyfuss is brilliant in this movie.
I could see James Caan in this too, though. That now that you said it, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I
He's
feel
got a
like he would
presence
have like
about him.
slapped an alien. Hey, backhand.
Exactly. Yeah. What's your point?
Yeah. It would be awesome.
Al Pacino.
No, I totally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Pacino. No, Richard Dreyfuss has that vulnerability to him. You know, I think he works so well on this.
He's just got that kind of like, that sort of like nasally kind of just
Like,
like.
did you say Dustin Hoffman on that list? Because this is the only other person I was thinking of that could have been like.
Ooh,
I could
yes.
see that, and that the very similar character type.
I agree with you. Actually, I think Dustin Hoffman could have done this movie quite well.
Yeah, it might have had a darker edge to the character, but I agree. I think he would have been really good.
Two bits of casting I want to bring up is one, Lance Henriksen not looking scary in a movie.
I saw his name in the credits. I was like, I don't remember who he played.
I think he has like 2 lines. Yeah.
He's in the background. He hands a thing over. There's a couple of close-ups when he's just looking at the aliens at the end. But yeah, Lance Henriksen. But also, I only just spotted this like right before we got on. But it is one of the military police officers, Carl Weathers.
Oh,
Carl Action Jackson Weathers.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
In a teeny tiny little role.
It's like Cuba Gooding Jr. showing up in Blown Away.
So yes, so all of these
exactly the same.
movies have excellent production value. So this may surprise you specifically because it's Spielberg as well, but because of his experience on Jaws on location, he wanted to do this whole movie on a studio lot, which when you watch it, it's the exact opposite. It's almost all shot outside on location in a house that's in an actual neighborhood because you can see the neighborhood through the window. So, I can't even, I was about to say I can't even imagine what this movie would be like if it had only been shot in a studio by Spielberg, but I do know that's the 4th Indiana Jones movie. That's why the 4th Indiana Jones movie is completely different to all the other ones because there's no location shoots, basically. It's all shot on sound stages, which is why it feels so not quite right to me when I'm watching it.
Which can work for a movie, but not a globe-trotting adventure like that,
Yeah,
Right.
and not Close Encounters, because you get those beautiful sweeping shots, just so many of them. The bit where, they're trying to break into Wyoming and they're going off, through the country, and you just get these amazing,
But now
beautiful.
that shot where they're all on the hill waiting for the ships to come, that seems like it was a studio.
Yeah, you
thing,
can
but I
see
don't know,
that's
right?
so they've
Or
built
a matte painting or something.
Yes, they've built but I was always impressed by how the sense of scale always works.
Yeah.
When they shoot it from high or they shoot it from distance and they put it into the situation, I go, oh, that's some good comping going on there.
Yeah.
That they've got like the matte painting or just like a still of the image, and they've built this set, which is the whole like you said, the
Four-door crew, figure it out, man. Figure it out.
dance
Tell
party.
us how they did the clouds. My first thought was like, oh, they just dropped ink in water, but man, it just seemed.
I think it's
I don't
along
know.
those lines of it being sort of like the smoke has got a sort of a heavier gas in it, and then you pour it out onto glass that the camera is underneath. They've done sort of
cool.
similar effects like that when it was like the
That's awesome. This is why we need Carrie Byron back on the show.
Yeah, we know she knows exactly how to do it. But that Charlton Heston, like the 10 Commandments kind of stuff. They've got
there you
incredible techniques that they use. Similar
Which,
kind of things.
funnily enough, they're watching in this movie.
Yes.
Yep.
Good callback. And also like Pinocchio. There's all these little Pinocchio Like you even get the Pinocchio theme plays very slightly in the at the end with John Williams as well.
Mhm.
But what I'm sort of like trying to do is segue into our, the what we do on this podcast is to try
All
and
right.
find one, yeah, that
Oh, yeah.
defines the state. And I think this one, good Lord, guys, I think there may be another 3 hours to this podcast because they all bring something to the table that is legit. So like I said, they all feature shooting in Wyoming, so they've all got that tick. You've got close encounters with the iconography, like I said, that we talked about, that even only a small amount of the movie takes place in Wyoming, because of what he does with Devil's Tower, it is like a stamp. I mean, it is incredible movie stamp. Wind River, like we were discussing, has that feel of desolate and isolation and everything else, that gives us a different look. And then Shane is the pound for pound, like, almost like come out of the gate favorite, because it's entirely shot on location, it's entirely representative. But of course, as we've discussed in other times, and even like how Carrie did with Blade Runner, is it's a time of the past. Wind River is very much a time of the now, and then Close Encounters is just iconic movie. Where are we going to land on this one?
I'm sorry, there's no cyberpunk thriller set in Wyoming.
Yet. There is a Blade Runner TV show coming out. Maybe it's going to be set in Wyoming. But
only hope.
Go for it, guys. What do you guys think?
This was a difficult challenge for sure. And I think, like, with Shane, yes, it's all Wyoming, but could you set that same movie anywhere else and it would more or less be the same? Like, if it was set in a Utah or Arizona, like, would that change the dynamic of the film?
I mean, yes. I mean, another movie I love, it's Open Range, which is like a Kevin Costner movie, which is very sort of similar. It's telling a similar story about, this sort of open range. But that, I think the central sort of chat of the movie, the central plot, is very defining for Wyoming, because it had that because it's the idea of open range and homesteading. That's why it sort of fits in, but it's also just, I mean, the look of it, those shots with the Grand Tetons in the background, with the general store in the foreground, I was astounded. I mean, like, I wanted to move to Wyoming.
With that said, I can probably eliminate Wind River from the conversation, just because I don't think it captures the right essence of what we're trying to do. I think
you kind of, subject matter's too dark.
I do, but
you don't want to say that Wyoming is defined by the fact that Native women are disappearing and getting murdered. Is that kind of what you're saying?
You said it.
Right,
I don't want, like, I think I forgot what other one it was. I really don't want this movie to win, because I don't want people to think that's how we're perceiving them to be depicted.
I understand. I get why you're saying it. But it's like
one of the reasons I'm not on social media, so you can't come after me. That being said, leave a comment in the comment.
Go to our Reddit. Though I would say, like, but Wind River is giving us this more modern, realistic, feel. I mean, I would say, so counterpoint is that Shane is, the past. It is this whole thing, kind of like sort of Giant was, and Close Encounters it's visually, yes, but it's not really giving us the Wyoming of it. We get to see it. We get to see the expanse of it. We get to hear references from the army saying, those ranches, they're going to be hard to do, and like talking about how it works and how there's, like, so much space and everything else. But Wind River is just like straight up, this is the reality of. So is it, I would say, is Wind River in fact not to be got rid of? Is it leading the pack? I like stirring the pot. Will, get it involved. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think with Wind River, I think there's actually a couple of states like that could have filled the same like needs that Wind River did story wise. Like, it could have been set in Alaska, and I don't think it would change a whole lot. It would be different tribes for sure, but it wouldn't change the story a great deal. Shane is, like you said, Ollie, it deals a lot with homesteaders, and the big thrust of that story is you've got kind of big evil land barons trying to push out, the settlers, the little guys. Plus, you got the iconography of, the mountains of Wyoming.
Yeah.
Close Encounters for me, because it takes so long to get to Wyoming, and then the only thing you see is Devil's Tower.
Right.
It's iconic, but that's not the state. And even when we're dealing with everything there, it's not really dealing with the Wyoming of it all. It's dealing with aliens are showing up.
Yeah. But you can't deny the fact that this movie made such an impact that people were flocking to Devil's.
Oh,
Yeah.
it screens there every
Tower.
night. Like, they do a screening of the movie at Devil's Tower.
That's cool.
I'm tending to, when I was, again, just the idea for this podcast was coming, but one of the other ideas I had was just this kind of like a road trip around America to go to sort of like these iconic movie places, because for that exact reason, Ryan, you're hit the nail on the head, is I want to go to that place. I mean, it's even like in the movie Paul, with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, is that's where they end up like as well. It's that little sort of like that reference as well.
You mean you could have picked Paul and you went with Close Encounters? God.
Yeah. Man, I had to remember it 100%. But you know what? Your counter to my counter was a good one with Wind River, is that you're right. We could have set this in a Dakota or in an area where there are other reservations. It could have been a Colorado. It could have told the exact same story, because it is a story that is unfortunately true, and is happening all over the state. So, all right, okay, I'm willing to eliminate Wind River because that was a very good point. So Wind River, that one. Okay, don't worry. You're gonna breathe a sigh of relief from there, Ryan. But now it's
that said, if I had to put them head to head, I'm going. You can't deny the fact that you cannot, as I always say, you cannot take the Wyoming out of Close Encounters. But I think, going head to head, I think Shane is the bigger draw. And that's why I keep saying we need a point scale here, guys. We need like facts and data and charts and figures.
See, I get what you're saying, but also is like there's this just, if we go only on facts and figures, then it will just like, oh, this one made more, this one's got 18 minutes more footage. I'm like, no, it's you've got to feel it. And I'm liking this because it feels like a heavyweight battle now. Close Encounters versus Shane. Because Shane is, I mean, to me, if you're going figures, data, I mean, even in the first 5 minutes, I was like, Shane's going to win, because this has got Wyoming all over it. But then Close Encounters they've got better PR, it has survived the test of time since the 70s. It is iconic, where Shane is like, oh, did you see Shane? It created a story that has lived forever.
That's very true.
That's fair. It's safe to say maybe Shane even inspired Spielberg in some aspects. I don't know.
It's inspired every single Western ever made, and every single like you said, it's inspired The Mandalorian. So even now, Shane's effect, the ripple of Shane, continues through all of the media that we're watching. But that's not because of the Wyoming. That's because of the screenplay.
The story, for sure.
So
and I will say that the Devil's Tower, like you can't take you can't take the Wyoming, as little of it as in the movie. You can't take it out of Close Encounters, because it changes it's
the apex, like it's where everything converges at that point.
See, the logic in me wants to say Shane, but the movie guy in me wants to say Close Encounters. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm leaning towards Close Encounters until one of you guys is gonna say something that's gonna change my mind.
I love Close Encounters, but his character is kind of a dickhead, like all things considered.
He's from Indiana, so we can't blame Wyoming on that.
Perfect.
Right. No, but just the character, I mean, for the movie in general, like he basically goes nuts, tells his family to fuck off, and then leaves with a bunch of little alien children, mind you. Like, what is he doing on that ship? What's the goal here?
I will say that Close Encounters it's a different movie than I remembered it being.
Yeah.
I think I would recommend everybody listening, go back and watch Close Encounters, but actually watch it. And you're just like, they don't make movies like this. This is a very ballsy approach.
I was gonna say, it's a ball for coming right off of Jaws to do this type of film was pretty. I'm sure it made a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, like $300 million. It was one of the.
I was trying to picture myself, as I often do, like sitting in the theater watching this movie at that time would have been mind blowing. But the same would be said with Shane, although I don't know if there were other Western films kind of in that ethos at that time, whereas there was nothing like Close Encounters at that time. No one was doing it.
And it's also got
yeah. It's the only movie that was based off of the game Simon.
Yeah. I had the same thought as
I thought of that. I'm like, Spielberg heard one of his kids playing Simon. He's like, I've got it. I've got the music to my film. He goes, John, you're never gonna believe this.
I'm partial to that theme because I believe that's the Star Tours, like the original Star Tours. That's cool. Like just a little rearranged. I love that ride. That's great.
Yeah, classic ride. I love that one as well. Ooh, okay, boys, come on. I'm leaning towards Close Encounters. I think the movie fan in me, and I think a little bit of just the bias of this is the, like I said, the movie and the location that clicked this idea of this podcast for me.
Fair.
So I throw it to you guys. This is kind of more of a.
I think no matter what we land on, the good people of Wyoming are gonna have thoughts. That said, I'd love to know what they consider their like home turf. Like, no, this is our movie.
I'm with you. 100%.
That said, I would begrudgingly go with Close Encounters just because it's like I said, you can't take.
It's impossible to remove Devil's Tower from the movie. It just, like I said, as little of Wyoming as in the movie, the part that's there,
it's substantial.
It's so important. It's such a linchpin of the movie that it can't be removed. Whereas, like, I could set Shane in Arizona, for example. It would change it slightly, but not a great deal.
Right. As any blanket Western could be set, but I don't think you can't deny that the impact that Close Encounters has on Wyoming is just is substantial.
There you go, and that's something we got into in the North Carolina episode about how Dirty Dancing wasn't set there, but that town is now defined by it. They have Dirty Dancing Day, Dirty Dancing tours, and it's like like Will was saying, if you go to Devil's Tower, you can watch Close Encounters. So there are certain movies that
not to keep bringing it up, but Detroit's got a RoboCop statue, and the whole thing was shot in Dallas. So,
that's the same thing. Exactly. That's that debate that we get into, the shot in versus set in, that there are movies that aren't really about this place or this town or this state that define it for those people and for that area. So have we? I mean, Will, you haven't expressed it.
I think I'm gonna go with Close Encounters as well.
Okay, I'm amazed. I can't believe it. I honestly,
another movie I never want to watch again. Like, I don't want to watch it.
It's not quite an endorsement for me because I was super bored during this movie. But
I was too. But I still love it.
The three movies that we picked are all kind of like a one and doneer. Watch, so there are people that listen to this podcast that are watching movies along with us. You guys send us messages. I love it.
We love it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Please.
We genuinely love that you guys are doing this because we love doing it as well. But this particular week was excellent movies. But, Shane is not a movie I'm going to be banging on again in the next 10 years. Neither is Wind River and neither is Close Encounters. They were all like, wow. And they were a thing and an experience, but it's not like Master and Commander. It's not my sort of.
I was gonna say it's not like Requiem for a Dream, a nonstop laugh riot where you can just watch that over and over again.
Dude,
or the Deer Hunter.
My daughter, Deer Hunter. I've seen that once, never again. But my daughter was talking about we've been getting in about movies, and she was talking about how she wanted to watch Requiem for a Dream. I go, fuck no. I'm like, I'm not watching it. You can watch it. I'm not watching it. And I said, I don't think you're going to enjoy it, but okay.
It's a little rough.
Yeah, a little. So there it is. Officially on the United States of Movie podcast, we have chosen Close Encounters of the Third Kind as to be the defining movie to represent Wyoming, at least until somebody comes along with a better idea. And like we talked about earlier, and we'll touch on right now with our also rans, there's a lot of really great movies.
Oh yeah.
It shouldn't be hard to usurp Close Encounters, so I'm excited to see where we end up next.
I think returning this, I think we talked a little bit about it, but for me, Wind River was my instinctual, as was Unforgiven. And I knew that Ryan, you were wanting to do Wind River because you initially thought it was Alaska when we were
kicking myself.
And then and then I was going to do Unforgiven. But then when you bought Shane, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't, because it's basically the same movie. So it kind of pushed me into doing Close Encounters, sort of almost like I didn't want to, but then I realized it was the right choice, clearly. But were there other also rounds that we haven't mentioned that you can think of?
I think, was it Brokeback Mountain another one in Wyoming?
Yeah, we were. I think we were all kind of considering that at one point.
Yeah.
And I do have a story to tell about that if we ever get to that in the future. I'll save it for that podcast.
Yeah. That would have been a good one. Yeah, I mean, but like I only ever got to see that on a plane, but that on this tiny little screen. But it was the stunning vistas.
Yeah,
that was
I'm sure people are going to scream at us in the comments for not picking that one.
Yeah,
I was going to go with a little movie called Any Which Way But Loose, which stars Clint Eastwood and a chimpanzee.
I almost picked up.
It's an orangutan. It's an orangutan.
Orangutan, excuse me. Yeah. Sorry.
Does the entire movie take place in
I have
Wyoming?
no idea. I've never seen it. It just popped up on the list. I was like, oh, this sounds like a Ryan pick for sure.
There's two. Have you seen them both? I've seen both of them. I used to they used to come.
There's two of them?
Yeah, there's Any Which Way But Loose and Every Which Way But something.
Any Which Way You Can. Yeah.
Same chimp?
So there's a sequel with Clyde the orangutan.
Clyde.
So yeah, no, I'm with you guys that I think when we come back to Wyoming, there's going to be an interesting debate.
Yeah. Well, you were really close to picking Meet the Deedles.
Yes. Brought that up. Yeah, a movie I have not seen has terrible reviews, but it's got Paul Walker as a surfer who has to make it in Wyoming.
It sounds like Out Cold in Wyoming, and I'm all about it.
I was honestly hoping, and at the same time hoping no one did choose it. But I want everyone, if you're listening right now, whip out your phone or something, but type in Meet the Deedles. It's a Disney movie. The cover of it is ridiculous. It's got a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is available right now on Disney Plus. It's got Dennis Hopper in it. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's got a stack cast, but with every kind of like bad movie like this, you have to be careful because there's like Hard Ticket to Hawaii and The Wraith bad, but there's also like just
pure bad.
Really
there's so bad it's good, and then there's just plain bad.
Like alcohol.
Yeah.
Oh
you shut your mouth.
Dude, you've got a blank check from me for The Wraith, so don't you worry.
I came out of the gate hot with that one. Yeah,
it's been living rent-free in my head since basically.
We are the reason that Amazon Prime put that movie on like the day after we released that episode.
I don't disagree.
Yeah,
I swear to God.
Hear that, Bezos?
We created something in the algorithms that people are craving this movie. We need to make it available for free. All right, fellas, that's a great one. So we just have to decide where we're going next week. I already know where we're going next week, and we're going because we also get to bring back who's going to become our first All-Star, because it'll be her second appearance. We're going to go with South Carolina. We're going to get Beth Troutman back on the show.
Yes.
So that we're going to just have some fun, because I had so much fun with Carrie. I think, I love it when we have guests on the show. It adds a little bit of something. And Beth Troutman has just insane movie knowledge, especially when it comes to the Carolinas. So
there's two Carolinas?
Well, I'll get you up on the group chat about where we're going with movies. But yeah, next week, we're going to go to the state of South Carolina. We're going to be getting Beth Troutman back on the show, because that's just going to be a lot of fun. But until then, don't forget, we've had people reaching out to us, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Our Facebook page is now going. Our Reddit is getting some interaction. And we just love that people are coming along for this ride with us. As always, you can find me either as Ollie Pettigrew, Ollie_Pettigrew, or That Englishman in Texas. You can find Will as Entitled Willennial. And Ryan is actually going to start putting up on our Facebook page and on our Reddit. We're going to start putting some of these T-shirts, some of this merch that he's been coming up with. He's brilliant. He came up with if you listen to our last episode, he's created a poster for the James Hong podcast.
I completely forgot I did that. I gotta get that to James somehow.
Get that framed and send it to James Hong. But and that's it for this episode. So please keep reaching out, send us your suggestions. We do really listen to them and take them on board. But until then, thank you for all of you watching on YouTube or listening at home for this latest episode of the United States of a Movie podcast.